What is up guys, Andy Forrest Team Runner here and welcome back to another video, and today I want to share with you guys 5 key workouts that I recommend to you guys for a strong marathon build-up. So as I approach my 8th marathon training block leading in to London 2022 with just under 14 weeks to go, I'm putting the finishing touches to my training plan, which is kick-starting next week. And I'm excited to share with you guys the 5 key workouts that have really helped me over the years and take me from a 3:54 marathon runner down to a 2:44 marathon runner. Obviously a lot of you guys will have kick-started your training already, or some will be just approaching it, because obviously London is the first weekend in October. There's plenty of other marathons out there that are running throughout October, November and into December. So hopefully you can take what I say today, maybe adapt it, change it, and I'll help you guys with some suggestions there and see if you can slot them into your training. If you're excited for today guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and we'll kickstart with workout number 1. So I'm going to kickstart with a specific workout for you. Some of these are going to be specific and some are going to be a little bit more broad and general, but what I want to do is show you how you can adapt them into your training, how I've adapted them for me, and if I'm using them during this marathon block or not. So the first one we're going to kickstart with is the classic 2-mile repeat workout. Now for me, I've got 4 by 2 miles, or I'm doing a time block. So mine's going to be 4 by 12 minutes. I'm running my goal marathon pace in and around 6 minutes per mile. That's what I'm going to be training at. So that's how I'm incorporating it into my training. So 4 by 12 minutes, and then I'm going to be taking a 2-minute jog recovery. Back in the day when I was starting my marathon training, this was a peak workout. This was something that was more towards the end of my block. And I think that as you're a beginner and new runner, what we're aiming to do in a marathon is basically complete it and enjoy it and have fun whilst we're doing it. Obviously marathons can be quite a daunting process, but definitely towards the beginning, we're not looking so much at long run workouts, and we're not looking so much at these big workouts in midweek, but actually what we're doing is we're just working at building up our distance. And the way I started was just basically putting fast finishes on the end of my long run, and then from there progressing it down to actually putting workouts in, which we'll touch on very, very shortly. And again, when I was doing my 3:54 marathon, this was a workout that was very much towards the end and within a long run. So I used this within a long run. I did like a 20-minute warm-up, then I did 4 by 2 miles, I think at the time with 3 minutes recovery, and then I did a 20-minute cool down as well. And that was a good chunky long run. That was probably one of my peaks. Whereas now, this I think is in week 1 or 2, and this is going to be a midweek workout for me because my long runs are going to have a slightly different focus during this block. Now what I recommend with these is you can start by 2 by 2 miles, 3 by 2 miles, and work up to sort of 4 by 2 miles. I have heard people do 5. It's not something I've ever done, but I feel like 4 is a good sweet spot. That's 8 miles worth of really solid marathon pace work. Now, I've adapted these to use them in half marathon training as well, and I've done them at half marathon pace, but within this particular block, I'm going to be aiming to hit more around marathon pace for these reps. Now for me personally, this is just going to be a case of, it sounds daunting, it's a long time, but actually if I think about it, this is more going to be about generating fatigue more than anything, because in theory marathon pace should be relatively comfortable. So that's the first one I'm going to recommend. If you want to adapt it into yours, maybe consider doing 2 or 3 by 2 miles and seeing how you get on. And the second workout that I want to recommend to you guys is the moderate long run. Now the long run is the cornerstone of all training for me during marathon training, and in general I just love the long run. They are my favourite. If you follow the channel you'll know that. And a moderate long run is criminally underrated. A lot of people don't do them, and I couldn't recommend them enough. You will see me mostly do moderate long runs during this marathon training block. If you follow me on Strava, you'll see that I did one this weekend just gone. It was a little bit harder than moderate effort, but it was in and around that zone, and that's where I'm going to be targeting a lot of my long runs. It might be done on effort if I take the workout to the hill, or it might just be done on pace. Now let me explain where my moderate pace is, because a lot of new people ask this and it's quite difficult to explain. For me, it's pretty much sits almost slap bang in the middle of marathon pace, which is 6 flat per mile. That's what I'm going to be training at. And then my easy run pace, which can be anywhere from 7:20, 7:30 per mile up. My moderate range is somewhere between 6:40 and 6:50. That's where it should be. In terms of heart rate, if my maximum easy heart rate, or my easy runs, I like to try and keep between 130 and 138, somewhere in that area. Moderate was going to be between 146 and 153 in that area. My marathon heart rate, my goal marathon heart rate, is going to be in the 160s. So it literally is sitting right in between those two areas. Now for me, It gives you the most bang for your buck. There is nothing better, and I love it so much. As I said, you'll see me do a lot of this. When I recommend this to other people and they say, how do I even go about working out what my moderate pace is? I usually just say to them, start off by taking your easy pace and notching it up just a level. If you just literally increase your pace a small amount, so you start to breathe a little bit harder, but it's nothing uncomfortable in the slightest, and just kind of work just above your easy zone. And when you start to feel like that becomes a little bit too easy, then just notch it again. Obviously, you don't want to keep continuing to take it further and further because you're going to take away the point of a moderate run, but you can see roughly where mine sits, and maybe that's somewhere you guys can work up to as well. And the third key workout that I want to recommend to you guys, and this is a brilliant fatigue builder, is the 1K on 1K off, or the 1 mile on 1 mile off, depending on where you're at. I've done both of these, I do both of these, and you will see me do at least a mile on mile off, I think, during this training block. Now, before my last marathon, actually before my sub 3 hour marathon in Abingdon, which was a 2:59, I did 8 by 1 mile on 1 mile off. So that was 16 miles and 8 miles worth of work. I did the ons at marathon pace, and then I took a mile easy. But with the K on K off, that's a little bit more of a popular workout because the efforts are a bit shorter, but you can condense more, and a lot of people can really build up to doing 21Ks worth of work. So that might end up being 11K on and 10K off. So you finish on the hard rep, and then that's it. You just jump back into an easy cool down. Now, why this is good is because it generates that fatigue as you're running, you're working at that marathon pace, you're having to slow back down, and then you build back up. Now, there's a multitude of ways of doing this. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas that are great for working into your training, and I would recommend, if you've never done something like this before, really just taking it simple with something like 4, 5 or 6 by K on K off. Now, if you take your marathon pace, I tend to do these workouts towards the end of my training block. And what I do with these is I have the on reps at marathon pace and then the off reps at moderate pace. So for me, that's going to be 6 flat on the on miles or Ks, and then 6:40 on the off miles or off Ks. For other people, they like to do something called over and under, which is where they have their marathon pace and they'll go 10-20 seconds a mile, or let's say 10 seconds a mile over, or 10-15 seconds a K over, and then on the other one they might go 10-15 seconds a mile or K slower. So you're working in and around that marathon pace, but not too much. And again, this can be adaptive for half marathon workouts. You just do less reps, but you're working around that quicker intensity, so you're working around half marathon pace. Obviously, everything is scalable and adaptable with these workouts, but for me, I tend to use them specifically working on marathon pace. A lot of people, though, as I said, like to use over and unders. Now, as I said, just simply start off by something like 4, 5 or 6 by a K on off, which is going to be between 10 to 12 Ks worth of work. What you'll notice is towards the latter end of that, on the 5th and 6th K, is it gets quite hard to hold the off pace. Often a lot of people are able to sustain the on paces, but their recoveries get a little bit slower and a little bit slower every time, and that's brilliant because it's building that fatigue, it's generating fatigue, and your body is having to work hard to basically kick through that and get back into that more marathon pace groove, that faster rep pace that you've set. So that is workout number 3. And the fourth key workout is going to be all about that goal pace, working in and around that goal pace. You're hearing me talk a lot during this video about working around marathon pace, especially towards the end of your block as you get more specific. That's where you want to really be homing in on this goal pace. I'm going to be doing during this block some really good chunks of marathon pace work. 10 miles, 12 miles, 14, and I'll probably peak at around 16 miles. I won't go any further, but 16 miles of marathon pace work will be the top for me. Now, this isn't something I did in my last training block, and this isn't something I think I did in the one previously, but actually it's something I did in the one prior to that, and something that I really want to get back into because I know how beneficial it is from a psychological perspective, from a mental perspective, as well as physical, to string a good solid amount of goal work back to back to back. Now for me, as I said, I'm going to be aiming to peak around 16 miles, just take it really to as far as I can. I think that's going to be in and around 1 hour 45 worth of work. If I'm looking to run a 2 hour 40-ish marathon, that's going to be a decent amount of time in my marathon zone without fatiguing me too much. And again, it's all relative. depending on what our marathon paces and times are, it's just about scaling things up and down. I never recommend really going more on a long run, in particular, more than 3 hours ever. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, and I'm going to be sticking to in and around the 2.5 hour mark, peaking at maybe around 2 hour 45. That's where I'll be. So I'm working these goal long run paces into some easy sandwiched miles either side. So I might start with 20 minutes easy and then jump into that 16 miles at marathon pace, and then a nice 20-minute easy at the end, to be a really, really good long run effort. I can't stress enough how important it is to practice that goal marathon pace, and these are great ways to do it. And finally, we're going to talk all things progressive runs. This is an absolute beauty of a workout, something again I've been doing a lot of more recently, and explain how you guys can incorporate this into your training, because there's a multitude of ways of doing it. Once again, you can progress by mile or kilometer, and those tend to be the runs that you might do midweek. So I might do something like an 8 or a 10 mile midweek session, where I might progress from an easy pace and work my way down to half marathon pace, and my goal might be to average somewhere in the middle around moderate pace. That might be one way of doing it. Or if I'm doing a workout, I might a long run, I might progress in blocks of time. So I might do 30 minutes easy, 30 minutes marathon pace, 30 minutes half marathon pace, 10 minutes 10k pace, and wrap it, and then back to 30 minutes easy. But just work through the gears. I've done videos about going through the gears. You're going from gear 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. I've done speed workouts where I'm starting at gear 3, going to 4 and 5. I can't express to you how important it is to practice going through that gear, because what you're doing, especially up here, is you're fatiguing the mind as you get towards the end of that first time block, and then you're having to increase it. Then you're fatiguing the mind and body and having to go again. You'll keep having to find that extra little something to take you to that next pace zone. Now, my preference for these progression runs is doing time blocks. It's not so much, you won't catch me doing many progression runs where I'm doing like 8 or 10 miles. Not that I don't want to, it's just not something that I ever really incorporate into my training, however beneficial they are. For me, the benefits during marathon training is doing the progression time blocks. So like, I will go out and do, over this marathon training cycle, I will probably do 2 hour, 2.5 hour runs where I'm just progressing through the time blocks and aiming to finish potentially at half marathon pace. It will start at very easy pace, go to moderate, go to marathon, then go to half. Those are brilliant. As I said, you're working through that fatigue, you're building stronger muscles, and you're just telling your body to kick on when it doesn't think it has much left to give. So there we go, those are my 5 key workouts to help you guys have a strong marathon build-up. Hopefully you can see how to adapt them into your training, but of course if you have any questions, do feel free to either drop me a message on Instagram or leave a comment below. More than happy to answer those. Also follow me on Strava, you'll see all of my training as I go through this marathon training block, and you'll see how I'm incorporating a lot of what I've just said into this London Marathon training build-up. I'm excited to share that with you. Training series coming soon, and hopefully you guys have a really strong marathon build up as well. That's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and as always, I'll see you on the next one. Until then.